Today in episode 37 of the podcast, we'll be talking about Cincinnati becoming a finalist for the Sundance Film Festival, and the Harry Potter series has begun its casting search. We'll also break down the 5th episode of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2, and review the film Transformers 1. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
So we want to start off the news this week, unfortunately, with the passing of legendary actor James Earl Jones, passed away at the age of 93. What an incredible life this man has lived. Widely considered to be one of the greatest actors of his generation. He gave us so many memorable roles, specifically Mufasa in The Lion King, The Sandlot, for those of us who love our sports movies. He was in Field of Dreams. So many legendary roles over the years. Obviously, his most probably well-known is the voice of Darth Vader in the Star Wars films as well. And just what an incredible legacy this man had in the film world.
Oh, such a huge, long career. You know, when you heard his voice, you knew that was James Earl Jones, and
Absolutely.
did so many, like, a big Broadway run with stuff. And, like, I still love the Big Bang Theory cameo that he did, because he's like, because you get to see him act like a child a little bit, because you like Star Wars? I like Star Wars too. And then they go to Carrie Fisher's house to play a joke. Like, and it was great to see him have fun like that too. But yeah, I think every role and everything he did was so memorable because of how he commanded the screen, his presence, his voice. And it is kind of sad with, Darth Vader. He was kind of the last one living. So, he was the voice and we lost the body, and there was also the face and the stunt guy. So it was like 4 different people overall who brought Darth Vader to life, and he was kind of the last one that was still here. But I mean, 93 is a great long life, but it's still sad to see, someone especially who's had such a legacy in film and Broadway and everything to pass away.
Yeah, and the outpouring of love and support for, him and his career, just so many people paying their respects with good reason. And he was one of the first, major names to really kind of jump into the, the voice rights, lending away to, gave the rights away to his voice to be used for AI. I don't say he gave away. He signed a deal to have his voice be used in the regenerated AI for Darth Vader and future Star Wars projects. I think the last thing he actually lent his voice for was, I want to say in 2021, maybe. Like, it was a few years ago, but his AI generated voice has been used since, especially in the I want to say the Obi-Wan series. That was his AI voice being used in that show, and it's he was really ahead of the curve on that too, because that's such a prominent thing that's being discussed now, and just an incredible career. There are very few people in the entertainment world that are holding the prestigious EGOT status, and he's one of them. So he won an Emmy, he won a Grammy, he won an honorary Oscar, he won a Tony Award. Like, the man did everything and is just such a legend and an icon in the business. And like you said, that big booming voice that he had is so, like you said, there's no second guessing when he spoke that was him, and just stood out in a crowd of voices. It was just so distinguishable, and just what a legendary career he had.
I haven't watched it in a while, but I kind of want to go back and watch the first Conan the Barbarian with having him squaring off against Arnold Schwarzenegger and everything. And that was such a fun role for him to do. And yeah, just a great storied career, a long life. But we offer our condolences out to his friends and family and everyone who worked with him, who knew him. He was a legend, and he deserves the respect that he's getting from everybody.
He's one of my favorite voices that people try to imitate. I do it all the time, with especially the Mufasa one for whatever reason, or who hasn't done an impression of Darth Vader at this point, you know what I mean? But just an absolute legend, incredible actor, incredible voice, and he will be dearly missed. 93 years old. What an amazing career the man had.
Yeah, well, so I want to offer our condolences over to the family and everybody of Peter Renaday. He was also another voice that was kind of big for us in our childhood because of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series. He was the original voice of Master Splinter. So that's a voice and a character that sticks with us to this day. Absolutely. And, we lost him at 89. So both of them had really long lives. But, just our condolences and thoughts out to everyone who knew him.
Absolutely.
So moving on to our news of the week, we've heard about this for a little bit now that, the HBO is going to be doing a live action Harry Potter series. We were getting that reboot, well, now the casting search has begun. They're looking for their Ron, Hermione, and Harry. They've got the casting search out. They're looking for 9 to 11-year-olds in either UK or Ireland. So you just missed the cut. I mean, you were so close.
That's devastating for me. I was ready to go fly out and shoot my shot, but I just missed the age mark. That's unfortunate, but it's really exciting though because we all love Harry Potter. Obviously, it's one of the biggest film franchises of all time. Absolutely legendary. They're integrated everywhere in Universal with theme parks in both California and Orlando. And just it really integrated into pop culture. Everybody knows what Harry Potter house they belong to. I'm a Ravenclaw. What are you? Like, what house are you?
I'm a Gryffindor.
Are you really a Gryffindor?
I am a Gryffindor.
Are you a Gryffindor or are you just saying you're
I am a Gryffindor.
Well, good for you. Anyway. Slytherin. Not really. I don't want to claim that house. But no, it's exciting. But you want to talk about pressure. Like, one thing to be cautious of is the pressure put on these kids that wind up getting this role because they are casting so young, which, the original actors who played Ron, Harry, and Hermione, like they talk about some of the struggles they had growing up and playing such a high profile role with that hopefully these kids don't have a very similar experience. But unfortunately, it seems like there's going to be a lot of attention and scrutiny on them just because of how popular Harry Potter is, and it's something to kind of keep an eye on. But it is exciting that they are moving forward with the whole casting process. It looks like they're getting ready to shoot the beginning of next year, and I know everybody's going to be tuning in to see what this looks like. Whether you're a Harry Potter fan or not, that's probably going to easily be Max's biggest show that they've ever had when it ultimately does come out. And I'm excited to see what it looks like.
He said the kids need to be 9 to 11 by April of 2025. So that looks like that's probably our window when they're going to start recording is early spring around April and May 2025. So I would venture to guess that that's probably 2026 that we'd see the first season, give a year for filming and editing and everything else, because we don't know, are they trying to cover a book per season? Are they going to stretch each book out into 2 seasons? We don't exactly know what their game plan is of trying to do this. Like, it would kind of make sense if each season was a book, maybe go 7 seasons and, they make sure they have enough episodes and everything that fills it out. But we'll see how long this actually runs and stuff, because you also got to think about, just like they did with the films, the kids growing up and aging. They can't wait too long to start recording every single season because they got to strike while the kids are still at that age. I mean, like I said, we saw the original actors grow up all throughout the series, and it'll be interesting to see how they do the series compared to the movies. They made a lot of changes for the movies. They left a lot of stuff out. Are we going to get some of the more, lower, that didn't have a huge impact on the story, but there was some fan favorite stuff that was cut, and maybe get more into the relationships and the friendships and everything else. I'm really curious to see how they handle the series compared to the movies.
Yeah, is it going to be a more quote unquote faithful adaptation of the books or not? And that's something definitely worth exploring. How long are these seasons going to be? Are they going to be 10 episodes? Are they going to be 8 episodes? Are they going to be 12 episodes? We don't
20 episodes.
Yeah, we don't know yet. But to your point, though, that's an interesting thing they got to do is. Anybody committing to this role is probably committed for a decade at least, because you got to figure, like, by the time they shoot all of these seasons, they're not. I can't imagine they're going to shoot them like back to back to back to back to back like right away, or maybe they are. I don't know what the shooting schedule for that's going to look like, and do they shoot one season in 25 and then one in 26 and one? It'd be great if they could work that out and do that, but we just don't know yet. And from what I understood, they are planning on this show being around for a while. Like, they are very heavily investing in this show, and for good reason. Obviously, Harry Potter, like we said, one of the biggest film franchises of all time, multi-billion-dollar franchise that, hey, we're going to invest in this, it's going to pay off, and they're going to have it for 7 or 8 seasons or however long they're going to commit to it, and that's a huge chunk of time. So that's not even taking into account, the older actors that are going to be playing the teachers, the headmaster, who's going to be Dumbledore. Like, I don't know, like, how are we going to approach this? It's going to be interesting to see what direction they take creatively with this, and it's something that everybody's going to be chomping at the bit for when it does come out, and it's going to be a big deal.
And like you said, with the pressure of the kids taking on these main characters, but it's still the same with the adults, with who's going to follow Snape, who's going to follow Dumbledore, who's going to be Hagrid, because, I mean, even though we had a few Dumbledores because of passings and stuff, like Alan Rickman as Snape was just amazing, and Robbie Coltrane was amazing as Hagrid and stuff. So you've got some big shoes to fill with a lot of these roles with people who have passed away. There's going to be a lot of comparisons. people, all right, well, he wasn't quite as good, and they're always going to be measuring up against who came before. So there's a lot of pressure for the actors who step into these roles.
Absolutely, and it's not something to take lightly. And like even like just speaking to how popular it is, we're still getting like new Harry Potter content now. They're doing like, I know Food Network's getting ready to show a baking, or it may not be on Food Network, but there's some network that's doing like a Harry Potter baking series that's hosted by the actors that played the Weasley twins. Like it's still getting new fresh content to this day, and they haven't made a movie in over a decade now.
Yeah, the Hogwarts Legacy game did decently well after some controversy, of course, with everything with JK and all that, and they're already talking about doing a second game and how that's very important to them. So yeah, there's still everywhere. A lot of Harry Potter stuff going. Even the new Epic Universe theme park is getting a new Harry Potter expansion. So the world is still around and growing, and it's not going away anytime soon. And yeah, this series hopefully is done really well. Like I hope they're taking the proper care to tell the story, differently than the movie did, but paying tribute and honor to the books and making sure they're doing the characters and the story right.
Absolutely, and it's definitely one to look forward to when it comes out for sure. And it sounds like they're getting ready to start filming, so that's very exciting. And obviously, we'll be waiting very anxiously for that to come out to see what it looks like. And hopefully, they continue that wonderful legacy of those stories that we all know and love. And they'll take good care of them and do them in a way that's entertaining and, respectful to the original source material. Controversy around the person that created it notwithstanding, it's going to do big business when it comes out.
Yeah, for any of our international listeners or watchers, if you're in the UK or Ireland, you can go to the Cast It Talent website to get your kid or your nephew, whoever it may be.
You never know.
Get your audition in and see if maybe someone is the next Harry or Ron or Hermione.
That would be awesome if it was someone we knew that wound up having like a kid or a cousin or something like that in there. That's incredible, but definitely one that if you're in the UK, definitely make sure that you never know. Throw them out there. It could be, your kid or your nephew could be the next big TV star. You never know. It's exciting times for, everybody in the UK, and we can't wait for it. Mm-hmm. But moving from one major movie franchise to another, we got some news around Spider-Man 4 finally. Like we got a little bit of an update. We got a director attached to it finally, and it's going to be Destin Daniel Cretton, who's best known in the MCU universe as the director of Shang-Chi. He's directed a few other projects as well, but it looks like he's going to be attached to it. There's talks that Tom Holland and Zendaya are both in talks to return as well, and even the writers who've been writing all of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films are coming back for it as well. So it looks like we finally got some forward movement a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like that's going to start filming early next year as well. And we're hearing some rumblings about the story that it's, Marvel's talk like they want to bring Spider-Man back to the street level after doing everything with the Avengers and all that throughout. They want to go street level, but Sony wanted a multiverse saga, and it seems like they might have got a compromise at its street level with some multiverse saga. Just a little bit of tie-ins. We, with this latest Venom 3 trailer, we got Null being shown, so it's like, could that be? I mean, he's a pretty big villain. Could he maybe cross over into Spider-Man 4 and we get kind of a mix in between there? We don't really know the story points, but it is exciting that it's moving forward and having Daniel on. It looks like he's becoming one of Marvel's go-to guys because he's also directing and working on some of the episodes of Wonder Man as well. So, and he is still attached to Shang-Chi too. So, he's 4 projects now in the MCU, so they seem to really like him, even though Shang-Chi has taken so long to come back and get to the next level. But it's good to see that, they still got him involved and wrapped around in the MCU.
Yeah, he sounds like he's all in with it as well. They've got a lot of movement going on, but I know they talked about wanting to do like a multiversal thing, and it's so weird because they're kind of running out of, runway to get into that multiverse saga, because if you're reading up on a lot of the rumblings with Marvel, once we get past Secret Wars, the multiverse is done. Like, it sounds like they're going to pivot away from that, which I don't know how you could without a hard reset of things, but it seems like they're going to move over into, like, the mutants and the Fantastic Four that we've, talked ad nauseum about here. But if they're going to include some multiversal elements to it, they're going to have to shoot soon because, like I said, once Secret Wars comes out, it's a wrap on all of that. So they got to find a way to wrap that up in a way that, hopefully makes sense. But I'm excited to see if it does have potentially that integration with, Venom in the last Venom movie that's that's coming out as well. See if there's any ties to that as well. I'd love to see Null involved in the Spider-Man one. I know there's been, rumblings of him mixing it up with like Daredevil again.
Please give me Daredevil.
I want Daredevil in
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I want Daredevil in absolutely everything, and maybe we can get more of that. Like you said, street level, like Daredevil. Do they recast Iron Fist? I'm hearing rumblings that they could be bringing, a new Iron Fist in as well. And I know Kristen Ritter has been very publicly lobbying to play Jessica Jones again. Give me the Defenders and Spider-Man on the street level. I would love that. Like,
absolutely.
Some kind of integration, and we'll see what they do and winds up making sense for that. But yeah, I'm excited. Tom Holland's been fantastic in his portrayal of Peter Parker here, and I'm excited to see where they wrap up his portion of it, because it does kind of sound like once he does 4, that may be it outside of like some bigger projects for him. He may be ready to move on after that.
Yeah, because you probably at least have him Secret Wars, and you don't know if you have any involvement into Doomsday. Maybe, do 4, and then he goes into Secret Wars. But yeah, I would love it to be more of the street level, so we get to see him being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because he's been mostly used in the big epic stories. And we got him because the last one, they went to Europe on a trip and got to do all that, and we want to see him in New York being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. We got the brighter, more colorful suit and at the end of No Way Home and everything, and we got the drama, and it'd be nice to see, we could mix in Gwen Stacy or Black Cat, bringing in some other characters, because we do have that kind of reset right now that no one remembers who Spider-Man is. So you could easily move away from MJ a little bit and explore those other love interests and characters and stuff. But by the end, you have like MJ remembering him and bringing it back around to her. But, there's a lot they could play with where they kind of left him with No Way Home.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see where they pick that up and run with it, because you're kind of dealing with, like you said, a blank slate with Spider-Man that he's kind of starting over because of the events of No Way Home, and it's an incredibly touching, like almost heartbreaking, story for him that he has to deal with, like rebuilding his life from scratch, and nobody remembering him, which is insane, and it's going to be fun to see where they take that. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and we'll see in the end who won out. Is it going to be more multiverse saga that Sony wants, or is it going to be more street level grounded that Marvel wants? Because, we'll see eventually what happens there. Does Marvel eventually buy Sony so they can have the full rights back to Spider-Man? Because it is, they get the calls and everything. Even like Deadpool and Wolverine, they had to strategically place, like, there's a photo in Happy Hogan's office that does include Tom Holland Spider-Man, but it's covered up by the helmet, the kid's helmet, which, is supposed to be Peter and everything, because if they would have shown him, that counts as one of the appearances that they're allowed to have. So, like, they have to be very careful with how they use Spider-Man because of that deal with Sony.
And that's some of the subtle nuances of filmmaking that they do so well that I really enjoy. Just the little attention to details that it's kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But, nerds like us that like to nitpick some of those things and go back and look for the little details and stuff of that, it kind of rewards you for paying attention as closely as you are. And you're just like, I see what you're doing. Very smart move on your part. But that's the fun stuff that they do that kind of makes me love to nerd out about film and watching film and some of the subtle nuances to storytelling that if you're just paying attention to the big picture, you're not going to see unless you look harder for it. I love stuff like that. It's a lot of fun to go back and see.
And it's also the, I guess, darker side of the business. Like, hey, if you even use a picture of him, that counts towards what our partnership and everything agreement was. Like, just a picture of him?
Yeah,
like,
the
just
legalities
showing
are crazy.
anything of him is like, okay. And it's kind of surprising because you had Hulk under Universal and you had Spider-Man with Sony and stuff, and we'll see with them being owned by Disney. Do we eventually see some sort of change where we go? Because, Sony has been trying to milk the Spider-Man. You've got 3 Venom movies without Spider-Man in it.
Yeah. And they're smart business-wise for trying to do that because that's one of their major cash cows, right? And it kind of makes me just wonder what could have been had they not fractured so many of these intellectual properties and split them off like they did. How many cool stories could we have gotten had they had the rights to all of the characters from the get-go when all of this took off? Like, we could have had a proper, like, I say proper if you're, a comic book nerd like I am, of a proper original Avengers that would have included Spider-Man at the time, or would have included Wolverine because he was an OG Avenger, like those kind of things. Like, could you imagine Hugh Jackman in the original Avengers movie? That would have been awesome. You know what I mean? But what could have been. We're still, kind of making up for it now with like all the awesome stuff that we're getting, but it's kind of cool to play that what if game, just thinking about what could have been had they not sold all those out business-wise so many years ago and what stories we missed out on, but we're making up for it now.
Oh, there's even some discussion that Wolverine may not be part of the first X-Men group of the MCU because they still may be trying to use Hugh Jackman in different ways throughout that, so that we might have X-Men without Wolverine.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Which be interesting. Like, it's going to be, we knew it was going to be hard to, recast and reuse that role, but again, Hugh's in his 50s. Like, how long can he take? Because you're thinking we're at least 4, 5, 6 years away from the first X-Men movie. Like, that's quite a long ways away to still be committing to having Hugh play him or anything else. So I think it'd probably be Secret Wars that we're really going to find out where they're going forward with the X-Men universe.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. That's going to be a huge movie with a lot of story ramifications for, kind of the future of the MCU beyond that. And hopefully as we start coming towards that, we get a little bit of a view, they let us in on, where they're going beyond that, because there's a lot of slate of movies that they're keeping under their hat at the moment, which is smart. But as we get closer to that Secret Wars, what is the future beyond that? Because they're going to have to tell us eventually. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get a little bit of a roadmap, and it's going to be fun watching that next big reveal of slate of projects that's coming out after Secret Wars. And I'm very excited to see, because we got a little breadcrumbs of stuff that we think we know is coming, but when they drop that bomb on us, that's going to have everybody talking again.
Yeah. So, of course, with Netflix, with the addition of like live boxing and WWE coming over with Raw in January, they're adding a lot of live programming stuff, and it looks like they're going after Hot Ones and bringing live episodes of Hot Ones to their service, which is going to be interesting. Like, they do a great job with their interviews and stuff like that, and we're waiting to get our invite to come on Hot Ones.
Hi, Sean.
Just reach out. We're ready. Like, we'll do it.
Yeah, I would love to run through that. But yeah, they're really leaning heavy into the live space, and they're kind of testing some stuff out. So we've had some live stand-up specials. We had the, live roast of Tom Brady that was on there as well. So they've dabbled into the live aspect of it to some issues that they're working out for sure, because they haven't been the smoothest, operations-wise. But, hopefully they get that wrinkled out by the time WWE starts in January. But them getting a live Hot Ones could be very interesting, because I always wonder, like, how long those shoots take when he does those interviews. Is it, because those episodes are 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the person, and how long, like, I know how long it takes us to shoot an episode of this, so I can imagine the intricacies of shooting something like that and how long it takes for one video to shoot. Like, doing that in a live setting could be very interesting to see how they streamline that process to make it as cohesive and smooth an experience as you can find. And I'd love to see who he gets first. Does he bring back somebody, or does he get somebody on his bucket list that he's been wanting to talk to that he hasn't gotten a chance to yet? Because the man's been doing it for a while. Like, he is the king of, the king of interviews like that, man. I watch pretty much every episode when it drops, and he's such a great interviewer, and it's fun seeing how that show has evolved since he started it to where it is now, and just the big names that he gets and the fun times that they have. Like, there's certain episodes that'll always stand out, either the people that have the big reactions to the wings and the spice level of the food that they eat, to the ones that are just stone cold killers like Jenna Ortega, who doesn't blink practically through the entire
Ariana Grande, who just like, he looks like he's over there struggling, and she's like, at the end, she was like, hey, we can redo this episode if we want. Like, I feel bad. Like, she had no reaction to any of the salsas, and Sean, you can see the tears in his eyes, and he's like, even though he's done it for so long, she was just like a stone cold killer. Like, it didn't bother me at all, because it'll be interesting to see, especially those who struggle. We've seen some that have really had huge reactions. How is that going to play out live? Like, we have, because we don't know how much is maybe they talk ahead of time if they're going to do something. I mean, Conan was so unhinged of having his doctor come over and take the wing bones and stuff and see some stuff that was more sketchy.
Sure.
But it's going to be really interesting to see how they can handle this show as live. Like, it does it fit live, or is it better being the more smoother edited? Because Sean they do such a great job of getting interesting questions. I mean, even without the hot wings part, it would be a great show to watch, because he just has such interesting questions. But just that premise of eating hot wings and doing an interview, he breaks them down with the hot sauces to make them more vulnerable and talk about anything and everything. And like, it's going to be a lot of fun to see how they could do this as a live show.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love that. I love Hot Ones. It's such a great show and a great series. Like you said, he's really honed his craft into, it's fun. Like, it takes something so simple like people talking over food. Like, we do that every day with, our families and, going out and having dinner with friends and having a conversation. And he's turned it into a brilliant, powerhouse YouTube empire that he's got now. And I'd love to see it work out to where he lands on something like Netflix and just gets like a big deal with them to, start streaming some live interviews. It'd be a ton of fun. I'm here for it.
Yeah, man. Again, if you want to see us on Hot Ones, why don't you go let them know and that you want to see us on there. Maybe we'll be on there one day doing an interview with Sean ourselves.
I would love nothing more. It's a bucket list thing of mine. If we ever got to that point that we could be on there, I would be ecstatic and would love to get to that point to be on there for sure. So Sean, if you're watching, give us a call. We'd love to be on there for sure.
Absolutely.
But I want to pivot now into a movie that a lot of people have been clamoring for here lately, especially with like the career resurgence that Keanu Reeves has had again over the last several years. Like, he hasn't really gone anywhere, but like he's more in the spotlight now with some of the, the John Wick films that have really brought him really highly back into, public conscious of wanting him to be in all these projects. He's going to be in the new Sonic, film that's coming out later this year as well. But we got some news that Constantine 2, the follow-up to his, kind of cult hit Constantine that a lot of people really enjoyed, it's moving forward and it's got a script done finally.
Yeah, I'm excited that it's, we heard, I think it's been a few years now that they were going to move forward with doing a second Constantine, which, it does seem like a cult hit. There's a lot of people who didn't like it because Constantine's a British, blonde hair, blue eyes type of guy, and Keanu is not. Mm-hmm. But, and then we got, what was in the Arrowverse, we got to see kind of more faithful Constantine, but I really enjoyed the first Constantine. It was a dark, and I thought he did pretty well in it. And I'm excited to see a second one. You've got the original director, Francis Lawrence, is going to return as well, and they say it's going to be very rated R, so they're going to keep it dark and dramatic, and I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to see what they do with Constantine 2, and it is still kind of surprising, too, because of how DC has talked about having a big cohesive universe, that they're bringing something that happened many years ago now back out in, and I'm guessing it's going to be in that other verse, not part of the main DC, storyline. Do they do a different Constantine for the main story, or do they leave him alone? But it's just interesting with everything and all the changes that are happening in DC that we do have Constantine returning with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, but it's kind of also the same. You can apply that same logic to what they're doing with like Matt Reeves' Batman, which we're going to touch on here in a minute as well. But like, it's kind of its own standalone thing that they're not afraid to kind of let them go and branch off and be their own entities. I mean, we're literally a couple weeks away now from going to see a Joker movie that's got absolutely nothing to do with what James Gunn is trying to do at DC. So it feels like DC's willing to kind of let some of these things branch off and be their own entity if they want them to be, kind of thing. And I think, why wouldn't you let Keanu Reeves, do this as well? And it's exciting for me because I did like the original Constantine that he was in, and I love that they're keeping like this dark, very hard rated R aspect to this, because a lot of the stuff that Constantine's involved with is a lot of darker, spiritual, I don't want to say quite ghost-like type stuff, but he does deal with a lot of paranormal stuff and, goes in that. And there's some really dark and fun, creative things that you can do with that. And I'm excited to see what they come up with for the sequel because, where he ended the first one, didn't necessarily think they were ever going to make a second one. But if there's another story to tell for him, I'm here for it, and I'm interested to see where they go with it.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily knew that they were ever going to make a sequel. Like, I forgot, I didn't look up to see when the original Constantine came, but it's been quite a while since we've had it. It's been over 10 years since we had that, because you had Rachel Weisz in it, and you had, I think it was Gavin Rossdale's first acting job was in there, and they had a great representation of Satan, which I still remember that floating down at the sticky floor and everything that represented.
Cool visual.
I thought they did a really good job, and I'm looking forward to see where Constantine 2 could go, and if they set up to maybe turn it into a trilogy if it does really well. I mean, Keanu, he did. He had a huge popularity, disappeared for a little while, then came back, and just his popularity is such skyrocketed again with John Wick, and came back and did another Bill and Ted, and like he's just a guy that everyone loves, and just love seeing him just going back and doing some more of this stuff. And we're still waiting to see him in Star Wars and Marvel and everything else. But yeah, going back to Constantine. I hope that they do a really good job with it, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that when it does come out. We don't have a release date for it yet, obviously, because they finally finalized the script, but no even update on like casting or production. But the fact that there is some forward movement on that is pretty exciting, and I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah. So staying in DC here with Matt Reeves, the Batman, as we talked about, Robert Pattinson's The Batman does kind of exist outside of what they're doing because it came out before James Gunn kind of took over and stuff. And, Matt Reeves was talking that they are going to continue on making this a trilogy. So he's talked that they're still working on the script for the second one, but they are looking to get filming started next year. Some clues and hints that it's probably going to take place in winter. So we're looking at maybe having Mr. Freeze, which if they do that in a good dramatic way, and I can go back now and watch Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze and have fun with it, but it's still goofy, silly over the top. He's a very dramatic character that I think if they do it right, that it could be a lot of fun. And he also talked about how they're trying to stay away from the more fantastical villains and stuff and keep it more grounded, which a lot of us were hoping maybe we would see Clayface, something show up. He is a more fantastical because he can turn into a big blob of just goo and mud or, clay or whatever you want to call him and stuff. But I think that would still work really well in that universe just because of the dark, dramatic story behind that. But yeah, we're potentially, we don't know. It's taking place in winter. The first place you go, Batman, winter, Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, and that's where your brain ultimately goes first. And obviously with the Penguin, there's going to be some cohesiveness with that as well because you do have, jumping into what's coming up this week when we get there, like we've got the Penguin series that's starting and it's supposed to, bleed into the next Batman film. So it's going to take place pretty much right after wherever that series ends up.
I think it's like a week later.
Yeah, like right after that is when we jump into the next Batman movie. But there's a lot of cool things that they can, characters that they could pull on and touch on for in those types of, the darker movies with the darker tones that they're taking with, the direction of this. Because I thought Riddler was a great, first villain for that. And, there's been talks of is Barry Keoghan's Joker going to be involved in that, even as, you get him as like a spoiler bit into that film, especially like in the end credit scenes. You're like, do we get one with Joker? Which I'd like to see him kind of, as much as I love the Joker, I'd love to see him kind of pivot away from it, at least early on, and kind of give some other villains a little bit of a time to shine. Because you mentioned Mr. Freeze, who does have like a tragic and heartbreaking, story of how he became the villain that he was. I've been lobbying forever for one of my favorite villains is Hush. I think Hush would be perfect in this type of darker, this type of darker setting that they're trying to do. I think Hush would be an incredible choice to, pick for on there. And I know Matt Reeves has kind of come out and jokingly said, we're getting away from the fantastical stuff, so we're not doing Gentleman Ghost or anything like that. He's kind of, put the kibosh on that, the recent animated series had Gentleman Ghost in it, and they were like, are you going to do it? Because we put it in there, are you going to do it in this? He's like, no, we're not touching that. But I would love to see some of those other villains get a chance to shine because it seems like every time they do Batman films, they get the hits. They get Penguin, they get Joker, they get Two-Face, they get Penguin. I'd like to see them try and touch on some of these others because there are so many interesting villains. I say it all the time. Like Batman is my favorite superhero, but he's got the best cabal of villains to kind of pick from. And there's so many different nuances to these characters that I'd love to see them, get an opportunity to be on these films, and we'll see what direction they ultimately go in.
Yeah, I'd love to see him do Mr. Freeze in the dark and serious and dramatic way here. I think Mark Strong would be a fantastic Mr.
Absolutely.
Freeze. He brings the deeper voice and the more dramatic acting and stuff. I think he would be perfect to be Mr. Freeze and give us that dark, dramatic storyline. Maybe you could introduce Hush and have him be the main of the third, and we get kind of the Court of Owls, get Hush, kind of mix all these kind of storylines in. Could be a lot of fun for them to do here, but sure. I agree it would be nice to kind of move away from the Joker a little bit, just because we've had, 4 or 5 different Jokers now, and he's a great villain and a great character, but there are so many others that we could
Absolutely.
really dive into. And, we got Colin Farrell doing a different Penguin, which I think he's really
Fantastic.
looked really good, and I'm looking forward to the Penguin series a lot. But yeah, they could Because, I mean, like I mentioned, we got Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze. That's the only live-action Mr. Freeze we've had. Yeah. So to kind of revisit that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, there are a lot of villains that they could really go with that we haven't really touched on a lot to give a different angle and a different look at, his Batman. But to get confirmation that's going to be a trilogy now. But, it's taken a few years to get the second one. We'll see how long it takes to do the whole thing, but I really enjoyed the Batman. I loved how much they really showed of him being a detective and trying to figure stuff out, and that they want to stick with that being kind of a crime mystery type of movie. Like, hopefully the whole trilogy's that way, and we're getting more of the detective Batman. And Matt Reeves even gave an update on the Cape Crusader series on Prime Video that season 2's already in the works, and they might be close to getting a season 3 greenlit. We really enjoyed that series. You can go back and see what we thought of it, but yeah, he's all wrapped up in Batman right now, and I'm enjoying it. Like, he's done a great job with what he's done with the Batman. I'm looking forward to the Batman Part 2.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, if they're leaning more into the detective stuff, that's kind of why I've been lobbying so hard for a character like Hush or even a Victor Zsasz or something that's more of a controlled hitman serial killer type thing that I think would make for a good foil in a detective type setting that I think would do a really good job. I've enjoyed what they've done so far. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on what they decide to do moving forward. But yeah, I'm excited to see where they take this and continue to move forward. I love the tone of the films. It was shot incredibly well. I love the serious, darker, edgier, like shadowy type Batman stuff that you don't get a ton of in the bigger movies and stuff, where he's just all out in the bright and in the open and all his splendor, but you get that dark, gritty, like coming out of the shadows and taking guys kind of stuff that hasn't really been seen as much, that I'm excited to see them, integrate more into films moving forward for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, Matt Reeves did a great job with the Batman. I'm really looking forward to see what they can go, because it is a different than what Christopher Nolan did, different than what anybody's really done so far with the Batman, like just going and giving us younger detective, dark, like Riddler was much darker, serial killer like in there, and it fit the tone and fit everything they're doing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see the Penguin and seeing what they do with the rest of the Batman trilogy.
Yeah, I'm excited for that, and definitely looking forward to the Penguin when it starts this week for sure. I do want to pivot to our last story of the week, though, and it's kind of personal for us because they've announced the 3 finalists. It seems like Sundance Film Festival may be moving away from Utah. Now, Utah is one of the 3 finalists to potentially stay there, where it's been since its inception. I want to say it was 27 years ago since they started doing the Sundance Film Festival, and it's been in Utah the entire time. But the other 2 finalists are Colorado, specifically probably the Denver and the outlying Denver region, or Cincinnati of all places, which is obviously very near and dear to us because we are adjacent to Cincinnati, and we would love nothing more than for this festival to wind up here, because we're getting a lot more films being filmed here, and kind of like a lot of independent, non-major studio films are starting to film around our area. And it's very exciting to see that, potentially a film festival like this, who celebrates more of independent filmmakers and things like that, moving to our hometown and somewhere that we can, potentially be a part of.
Yeah, I'd love to see it come here. I mean, you could utilize Northern Kentucky a little bit. You can utilize, downtown Cincinnati, wherever they want to go, because that's kind of what Sundance did. They were Park City. They also, worked with Salt Lake City. So they had to bounce around to different places there. And it'd be a lot of fun to see it here. And it definitely would help and boost how things are growing here. Yeah, we've had part of the Bike Riders. We just had part of Superman get filmed here. We've had, a ton of different movies have had Cincinnati, because we do have a lot of older Art Deco architecture and everything else. So it's nice to see kind of our older towns and everything else. Like, a lot of period pieces are getting filmed here. Yeah. But it's nice to see how much it's grown in the last several years of the film industry, and maybe we'll start seeing some TV shows and other things filmed here. We'll see just exactly what having Sundance around here could do for the film industry in Cincinnati. We do see a lot of stuff kind of moving away from LA just because of how things are going out there, and they're finding different places. If any, I know Atlanta and Georgia has become a huge place to film in.
Vancouver is another one that's another one to, a big hub, especially for shooting TV. I know TV's big shooting in Vancouver. A lot of shows were done there, and it's interesting to see how they're expanding. Like you said, beyond that, I know a lot of shows are filmed over in Europe too. Like, a lot of big time shows are filmed all over the place out there as well. And it'd be exciting to see us get a little slice of that pie and get a festival like Sundance, which is big. It's one of my bucket lists as somebody who loves film to go to a Sundance Film Festival. And what better place to do it than right up the street if we get it.
Right in our backyard.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And that's definitely one that we would lobby hard to cover and kind of add a little something to our podcast. I know we've talked about it. If it does come here, we're going to try really hard to get like press credentials and things like that to kind of highlight some of that and give a little bit of variety to our show as well, but to also get to see some of these amazing films, like debut there. Like it's a big deal when the Sundance Film Festival rolls around. You get A-list actors and big-time directors and big industry people kind of come in and celebrate independent filmmaking and some of the, non-big budget, Hollywood tentpoles, and these movies could wind up becoming big hits in the long run. That's like, hey, how often do you in the theater seeing a trailer for a film and says won an award at the Sundance Film Festival? That could be here, and it's an exciting time for sure.
Yeah, because it's between Sundance and Venice Film Festival, you see a lot of big films, especially when it comes to award season, are debuting there to get reactions and get feelings. And yeah, we would love to have that here in the Cincinnati area, be able to cover it, go to it. But just for the film industry and everything as a whole in the Cincinnati area, we would love. And we're always trying to shine light on what we can that's going on here in the Cincinnati area, and the movies that are being filmed and cast, and just having a festival here, I think would really help the industry in Cincinnati.
For sure, absolutely. And I know we're going to find out, I want to say at the beginning of next year,
I think they said early next year,
of naming the winner of that and seeing who gets it. And it's going to start in 2027, I believe. 2026 is the last Sundance Film Festival currently scheduled in Utah, with wherever the news site's going to be getting it in 2027. So that's an exciting thing to keep a part of, and we'll keep everybody updated when we find out where they wind up, and hopefully it's here.
Yeah, because you got to give time you have movie theaters around, but you're going to need something that, a theater that's a spectacle, to have all these viewings and everything for the main films, and make sure they have the infrastructure and everything to handle, from hotels to the movie theaters for the screenings, and which theaters are going to be part of the Sundance Film Festival. So they're giving a couple years to be able to let the cities that are chosen, if they don't stay in Utah, to have time to make sure they have everything set up and ready for when the film festival does move.
For sure. And if you need some kind of upscale, like stage theater type thing to do it, obviously if you know the Cincinnati area, you have the Taft Theater. That's, a big place that you can hold something like that. You've got the Aronoff Center as well that could also be used. Lots of different options around here for stuff like that, for, bigger awards type stuff. And it's exciting to see, man. It's cool that, our area is growing as far as film goes. I love that. I love hearing when, big name actors are coming here and shooting projects, and you hear stories around town of people like, oh, I saw them get lunch down here at this place I go for lunch every day. Like, it's cool to see stuff like that, and that it's growing around here. It makes me happy, because it feels like our backyard's getting a little more Hollywood love, and I'm all for it.
Oh, absolutely. So moving over into our TV breakdown of the week, we do have episode 5 of season 2 of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. And this one I was kind of a little more mixed about. There was some stuff that was just like, all right, the writing was just kind of okay with it. We jump back into Sauron with the making of the ring. So we start right off that, all right, they've finished the 7 rings for the dwarves. And we get to see kind of more of what the rings are doing to the bearers, because we get to look at the High King and visions and things that he's having through the ring, and what impact the ring's having on Durin, the Dwarven King, and what he's going on. Because, as we left off, the dwarves were kind of shut out in the dark. Like, there was an earthquake or something that happened that shut off all the outside light, and they've been trying to find ways to kind of bring that back. And through whispers of the ring, that we have Durin goes to a wall and he finds dig here, and like, wait, what are you talking about? That's a supporting wall. And well, he ends up letting light back in. So the ring is starting to already have command and manipulate and use the wearers a lot more than we maybe expected, like right away. Like, we're seeing that Sauron is already starting to infect his way around from the dwarves to the elves already.
Yeah, and you're like, obviously we know what winds up happening for a lot of these characters, so where we're getting. And it's interesting to see like this process now of how these guys are starting to become corrupted by the rings, because one of the things that Celebrimbor is prideful of himself on is like, these are perfect rings. Like, there's nothing wrong with, my craft work. But now you throw the element of Sauron in, adding a little bit of, dark magic to these rings. You're starting to see the effect that it's starting to have on these guys. And, one of the big things they explore in this one, you get a lot of time with the dwarves in this episode, which I'm happy to see, because this interpersonal relationship between King Durin and Prince Durin, which I love that, that's that name lineage or whatever. But, Prince Durin is starting to, become suspicious of the hold that it's having over his father, the king, and it's making the king act in ways he wouldn't normally. He's, becoming greedier. He's becoming, distant and, not the same as, he's not showing the same character as he has before. And you get a very harrowing scene in this episode where he calls the heads of the other dwarven clans to his home, and he's like, hey, I'm going to give each one of you these rings so we can work together. But it's going to come at a cost where you have to share, half of your collections for your minings with me for giving you these rings. And that's not something he would have ever done before. So you're starting to see, that start to play out, which is probably one of the more highlighted parts of this episode for me, because you do start to go into, you get more time with the world of men and, some of the interpersonal things that I have a lot of issues with when we get to it. But the just sticking with the dwarven part of it right now, there's a lot of really good stuff that they do in this episode, and kind of like, do we listen to the ring? Is the ring really guiding us to where we want to get to and help us find these things that we're trying to find in our mining efforts here? And you start to really see that play out in this episode. So I thought, at least in that part, they did a good job.
And we got the reveal of the doors of Durin. So if you're a fan of the original Lord of the Rings movies and, of course, of books, you know what this door is. This is the door that they had to speak friend to enter, or that they were going through the mines and everything. And we got the revelation that the door has been created, and we're going to get that in place. So that was really interesting to see that part of it and stuff. But the two parts of this episode I had the most issues with was with the elves and with the men, because we can start with the elves here with Sauron and Celebrimbor. Is that Celebrimbor is just seemingly so easy to manipulate. Like, Sauron was just being able to do whatever he wanted with them, because he brought up, all right, now it's time, I want to make rings for men. We need 9 rings for men now. No, I don't want to make them. And he was just very easily talked into it, like, oh, well, that's kind of how it felt. Like, Sauron was just kind of like, yeah, well, you're going to do it because of this. And then we get, Durin reveals to him how his father is, and he's questioning, like, everything was fine. And Sauron's like, well, it was because you lied to the king to keep the forge open to make the rings and stuff, and it was your manipulation and deceit that has darkened the rings and stuff. And, like, you have no idea who this guy is who is commanding you to make all these rings of power, and you've just kind of done it.
Yeah, and he did a very good job of gaslighting Celebrimbor in this case, because it's like, no, I did everything like I normally do. These should be working fine. Not totally putting together that this guy is the X factor in, making these rings now, because he was very much opposed to it in the beginning, where he was like, I'm not making these for the men. Men are way more easily corruptible than elves and dwarves. Like, I'm not doing this. And like you said, Sauron's just basically like, well, you don't have to, but I'm going to move forward with making them anyway. Like, I'm going to do it, but you can help or you cannot, kind of thing. And it was just like, I just kind of threw my hands up at one point. I'm like, at what point does, like, none of this click for this guy that, it should be a major red flag that this guy's so gung-ho about making these rings that you're not trusting your own instincts here, where you're like, it's probably not a good idea that I make these rings for the men. And this guy's coming through and he's portraying himself as the gift, the god, whatever he's calling himself, the god of gifts or whatever the heck he's calling himself. And he's putting all this trust in this guy, and there's no red flags just jumping off. And obviously it's easier for us to say that when, from our perspective, we know who he is. But at the same time, it's just like, this guy's coming in, he's being awful pushy, and that's not setting off any bells.
We had another elf who asked him, like, what do you really know about him? And he's just like, huh?
He's the god of gifts.
Yes, we also got, throughout the Lord of the Rings, we know the main one ring gives invisibility to the bear and also takes them into kind of the other realm where they can see things. Well, we got one of the other elves is wearing that invisibility ring. She's messing with the forge and everything else, and she's able to kind of have a vision in this other realm, which is kind of neat and interesting to see kind of what caused that power and everything else. But it's also like, is that inspiration for the One Ring? Is that because it didn't look like the One Ring? So exactly, is there actually more than one ring that has that type of power? So it kind of, I don't know. Yeah. It affected me in like, wait, shouldn't that have just been for the One Ring? Because she also brings up a vision, which it seems like she's talking about the Balrog, that there is this, ancient evil that she was able to see through wearing this ring and stuff. But I don't know. I felt a little off about there was another ring that gave exactly the same as a One Ring, unless they go back and they reforge that ring into the One Ring, and that's kind of the setup of it. But I just don't know how I felt about including another ring that had the same powers as the One Ring.
And it could wind up being the inspiration for the One Ring, right? So that when you get to the Rings of Men, that it doesn't give them like those abilities, at least not that it's been explained to us at any point. It's just similar rings to what the dwarves and the elves got. And the one ring to rule them all is the one that's ultimately made for Sauron, right? That could eventually give them that invisibility. And we see what the powers of that ring are, that it's significantly stronger than any other ring that's been forged. So we know eventually that ring's going to get made. We just don't exactly know when, right? But yeah, it was just so weird to see that dynamic play out of this guy just got this strong grip over Celebrimbor that he's just so easily manipulated and kind of having his will bent to, do what needs to be done. Because he kind of gives him this ultimatum, like, if you don't help me, I'm going to go tell, your high king that you lied to.
I'm going to tell on you.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to go tattle on your high king on you. And, he's going to shut this forge down permanently and you'll never make another ring again kind of thing. And he was just like, all right, we'll do it. Like, it was just so flimsy. I had a big issue with that, but
yeah, because it's also supposed to be, he is the master forger. He is a guy who's able to make all this stuff. And when he refuses to make them in, Sauron's like, I'm just going to make it on my own. Like, don't you need? I mean, he got all the other elves and other people helping him, but again, it's like, I know you've been helping with the dwarven rings and the elven rings and stuff, but it's supposed to be him that's able to do all this stuff, and you just kind of, I'm just going to do it without you now. Like, no, Celebrimbor could have been like, no, I'm kicking you out of my forge and you're not touching anything. I'm going to command my people not to help you. Yeah. None of that happened.
There's no time for realism in the world of fantasy, man. That's kind of where we wind up with it. But it's just, I had such a strong issue just logically from that. But we, pivot back to the world of men, where we spend a good majority of our time in this episode. And, where we left off in this realm particular, you had Pharazôn leading this, more or less a coup against the queen, just to kind of usurp the power of the throne. And he's in charge now, and you're starting to see some of the fallout of that, where everybody who was loyal to the queen is being stripped of their rank. And, obviously with, the main captain there and, his followers, you have this really powerful scene where I like to equate this one main bad for this episode as our Joffrey, kind of putting a Game of Thrones reference on it, and this character that I cannot wait to see them get their comeuppance, and they almost got it in this episode with Kimmin, and it's a lot that they're going through. Like, this guy taking over and just tossing aside everybody who potentially could be of use to him, and just kind of stripping them down to their, starting over from their bare bones ranks of, any captainship or any rank you had previously is kind of null and void, and you're starting over. It's not a good way to win people over in your favor, in my opinion. It's just,
yeah, it's like Pharazôn just even gets asked by Kimmin, who at that point was being kind of a little voice of reason, was that Pharazôn was like, isn't it enough, or Kimmin's to him like, isn't it enough that you're king now? But it's not. Like, he wants more power. He not only wants this area, he wants all power over all men and stuff too. So he's on a power trip and everything too, to the point that we see him go up to one of the ball that they use, the crystal ball that they use to get the queen thrown out. It looks like, well, he's going to use that now. So
right,
he was able to manipulate and get himself in power. Now he's going to do the same thing that they used to throw out. And having the daughter of the captain be one of the main ones that turn against, like, she's Joffrey Jr. She's another character that you kind of just hate. But Kimmin was just, I loathed him by the end of this episode. Like, you get it interesting that, that we see that the men that have been stripped of the rank have still this love for the captain, that they feel like they're going to follow him regardless if he has a title or not. They're him, and they're down in, this, what is a holy place to them to pray. And, they're cunning bid farewell to someone who has passed away and doing this ritual. And Kimmin and guards come down to, basically just show that, I'm in power and you have nothing, and kind of get all that. And it was kind of an awkward scene as well. And you just got kind of this, well, you have him defeated, and then I'm just going to turn my back to you. And then we get to see another character killed off by this hateful, hated character. And like, he got his arm broken. Again, we're deep into this now. We're doing spoiler stuff. He got his arm broken, but then afterwards, it didn't look like he had any issues with his arm after he was able to do that. And I just had problems with Kimmin as a character. Just so snooty and cocky and arrogant and everything. Where did that come from? Like, he was a little helper of Farazan, and now all of a sudden he has such an ego to himself that it's just like,
he's got a lot of Joffrey in him, and that's why I call him Joffrey, because like he's in this fight, and he gets his butt kicked to the point where he had a sword to Kimmin's throat. He was like, I'm going to kill you. And the king talks him off the ledge and everything.
Or the captain talked him off.
Yeah, the captain talks him off the ledge, like, hey, you don't want to do this. So he just, instead of taking the sword and walking away, he just kind of tosses the sword aside, and he goes to walk away, and in true villain and TV fashion, you see the sword come through his, thing, and they show who just had his arm broken is able to, impale this guy with the sword and kill him. And it was kind of a shocking moment to like you kind of see it coming, but it's still kind of like shocking to see. Like, you'd figure like he was going to be a bigger part in these episodes. I'm blanking on his name. I'm trying to reach for it, but like, he was a character who's been fairly prominently featured in the show so far, and he's just gone in like one impaling of a sword later. And it was kind of jarring, but it's just, it makes you hate that character that much more. Like, I cannot wait for Kimmin to get his comeuppance at some point, and it's going to be spectacular, and I'm going to stand and applaud when it happens. But like that was just such a weird scene, because they were so disrespectful to these people and their faith and all this other stuff, that it's just such a weird display of power. Like, did it feel necessary? But to the point of the story they were trying to make, I guess it was.
Yeah, it kind of got you hating the world of men even more, just because of how, and I guess we used to touch on just how easily corruptible and everything else. But then in the end, in the Lord of the Rings lore, men are the ones in the end who defeat Sauron and say, alongside the elves and everybody else. But it was a man who defeated, but also led to the ring to continue on, and Sauron continue on. But I don't know, the whole where it got with the queen being blinded and being slapped, and him being cheered for because he walked up to an eagle, and that they decided, okay, we're just going to turn it over to you. And then he strips everybody of power and does all this other change. Like, why is there no reaction from the people on this stuff that he's doing? And it's just, this episode overall was one that I was just kind of like, the writing has had some rough points. We know there's a lot of people who don't like the show at all because they're going so far away from the main Lord of the Rings. And I've been trying to enjoy what they're presenting. This episode was one that I didn't really enjoy a lot of, what they presented there, because, the dwarves can be a little over the top as well. So you've got Durin's wife who is looking for this stone that they can learn to be able to sing and talk to the mountains again, and they have to haggle for it. But as soon as she gets it, she drops it.
Yeah.
Gets it knocked away, and it's just almost comical that she's chasing around the ball, and she's got to go get it, and I got to find the ball, and it rolls down into an area that she didn't even know existed. And in front of this lake that she just belts out a note, and all that helps her find the ball. And then we get kind of the bigger revelation with the dwarves there, as we hear a monstrous booming voice and everything else that we think, that's the Balrog. That's the creature of the deep. And she goes back to her husband about it, and he goes to the king, and the king just kind of ignores him. Oh, there's no evil. We're just going to you go dig. We're getting all the gold. We're getting everything we possibly can. I'm not worried about Balrog, because, of course, what happens to, Durin and all of the dwarves and everything in here, but it was a little silly. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna haggle about the ball, and then I drop it instantly.
Yeah, it was definitely over the top and like just absolutely ridiculous fashion that she loses this thing the second she buys it. But I mean, you get them trying to reconcile that the king's not acting the way that he normally has been, but she's putting a lot of pressure on her husband, the prince, to kind of like lean on him more, appeal to his good nature, appeal to his reasoning. You're his son. If anybody's going to get through to him, it's going to be you, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting to see that kind of dynamic between the two continue to evolve over the course of this season moving forward, because where they started, where they weren't speaking to each other, now they're kind of speaking to each other. He is more like, hey, like, you're in this, the king's like, I want you to be in this with me, and he gives him back his,
makes him a prince again.
Yeah, it makes him a prince again. He's Prince Durin again. He was like, he goes back to his wife, and he's kind of almost embarrassed that he has this around his neck, because he, she's like, you need to reason what you need to get him to stop. And not only did he not get him to stop, he wants him to join him now. And he's just like, what do I do? Like, I want this relationship with my dad to work out, but at the same time, like, it's going to cost us everything if we don't figure something out. So it'll be interesting to see how they, continue to tell that story throughout the rest of the season and, the remaining episodes that we have. But we're definitely moving forward, because there's only 3 episodes left in this season, and there's a lot of threads that we got to keep pushing forward here. And if you look at the next episode, it's going to kind of looks like it's pivoting a little bit more back towards, the stranger and the, the hobbits and, that story a lot more heavily too. But it's going to be wild to see how they, get all these people together like we're talking about, because it still feels like we're getting there. It's just we're taking a little bit of a longer road than we're expecting to get there.
Yeah, with 3 episodes left, like, there's not a whole lot of time to where everything is building. And, the other part of this episode was lightly touch on the rest of the elves, with the High King who's tracking the orcs and kind of what's going on there. And we get the reveal that the orcs have closed in on one of the major elf cities, and it looks like we're heading to our first, like, major war battle and stuff. But the High King is not exactly sure what he wants to do, because the ring is, he's even called out, like, are you going to make your decision based on the whispers of that ring, or what's best for your people? Like, what are you going to do? And he didn't really have anything to say. But, we kind of end on a cliffhanger with Galadriel, because she is taken back. We left her off of the last episode that she had went up against the orcs, and Adar had captured her while she's brought back to the orc encampment, and Adar pulls her out, and she's able to get the drop on him and pull a knife on him. But then he's like, we have a common enemy. I didn't bring you here as a prisoner. I brought you here as a potential ally. So, like, is that truthful? Are we actually, the orcs, and his part of it, is he turning on Sauron, or is this a manipulation of the elves or something else? So it kind of opened up a big potential story point there, but we're just left right at the end on a cliffhanger at that. Like, is he being truthful?
That was a good one, Daniel.
Want to turn on, or well, but that was an interesting thread it opened. But yeah, with 3 episodes left, there's a lot to kind of still go through. And I would say episode 5 is probably my least favorite episode of this season so far. I thought they've mostly done pretty strong with the first few episodes, but 5 was kind of it moved the story along a lot. Like, we got a lot more with the actual rings of power. We have the ones for men are being created. We have the dwarven ones are out there. We already had the elves rings given out. So the story was getting moved along with the main story points, but it was just kind of the writing and how things progressed in this episode was kind of a little rougher for me.
Yeah, and ending with, I want to go back just a little bit to that ending there with Adar. Like, you saw in the beginning where Adar is the one who's responsible for the orcs turning on Sauron, really, and kind of leading down that rabbit hole where we started the season at. And you have Adar now with, like, as the leader of the orcs, who's like this undead elf, basically, if you look at him, that's kind of leading these orcs. And is he really an enemy of Sauron at this point? Because everything we've been led to believe so far is to show, yes, he is. He's one with his own ambitions to kind of take over Middle-earth for the orcs. Kind of, that's like his thing. So it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic play out between the two. It's like, we might actually have a common enemy here. And is it going to be enough to stop Sauron at this point? We know where the orcs wind up, but it's kind of a fun thread to see, a little bit of a curve on this road to get to where we know we wind up. And it's going to be fun to see that dynamic play out as well. But yeah, I would agree that, when it comes to this episode, it's probably the weakest of the 5 so far. There's certain like nonsensical stuff that they throw in there that doesn't make a ton of sense, but it was still a fine episode. I think at the end of the day, like it's moving things along. It's not holding up too much, and it's not taking too much time focusing on things. It's giving you context for why people are behaving the way they are, and you're starting to see the rings take hold of these people now and see where it winds up corrupting them to make the decisions that they're making. So there was a lot of things they did well in this episode, and to say it's the weakest of the ones, I'd say probably on a scale out of 10, I'd give it a 6.
It's probably about a 5 or 6. It wasn't bad, but it was just the writing, just the dialogue, and some of the points just weren't the easy manipulation of Celebrimbor, and just the writing with how he manipulated him was just kind of okay. Like he's an intelligent elf who's been given this great power of the Forge and everything else, and he's just like, okay.
Yeah, that part of it is what kind of drags it down for me. That could have made it a little bit of a stronger episode. There's still really good things that happen in this episode that hopefully you're watching along and can agree with. And if you have a different opinion than us, please comment on the videos.
Let us know.
Come into our Discord and tell us how you feel about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm still excited to see where they go in these last 3 episodes. We're in the back half of the season now, so we're coming up towards the end of the season to see where they wind up. But we're on a good path here. I really feel like, this is all going to culminate in a really powerful, explosive confrontation at some point that we're all kind of working our way around to get back to, and I'm excited to see where they take it.
Yeah, there's also questions now that we know that Amazon has reiterated they're sticking to the 5-season plan that they have. If we're already at this point in season 2 with pretty much all the rings being created but the One Ring, will we get the One Ring being made now? Like, what is the overall story that they have planned for the next 3 seasons? If we already have almost all the rings out there, where exactly are we going with the story? If it's going to take 3 more seasons for them to go against Sauron, because by the finale of this series, it's probably going to end with the battle against Sauron, and taking the One Ring off of him and everything else. But just how much more do they have to tell between them? Because that's 3 more seasons to get to that point.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see this. I'm excited to see this journey and where they take it with us. I've enjoyed the show a lot so far, and this season I still feel is much better than the first season. They're making their strides, and still giving us there's still a few things that they need that I feel they could probably clean up a little bit, and we'll see if that continues in these next episodes moving forward. But yeah, they've got quite a long road to go to get to the end, but there's a lot of meat and a lot of story they can tell to get to that point too. So I'm excited to see how they progress this story moving to the end of this season and where they leave it off and where we're going to go for the last couple of seasons, because that's a lot. This series is probably going to run for several more years, because it's running a year in between seasons, maybe, or 2 years.
It takes a while to film, yeah. They're pouring billions of dollars into this series.
Yeah, so they're kind of sticking to their guns, which I respect. So let's see where they take us with it.
Yeah, so the first 5 episodes of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power Season 2 can be watched right now on Prime Video. Every Thursday we get a new episode. We've got 3 more left to see how this season wraps up. Hopefully they've got enough time to end up, but also give us a cliffhanger heading into Season 3. But that is the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power.
I'm excited for that. But now we want to get into a film that we're very lucky to have gotten an early advance screening of a film, Transformers 1. Now this is one that we've been looking forward to all year. It's a completely computer-generated Transformers film. We got an early advance screening. This movie actually doesn't open up wide until this week. This coming Thursday and Friday is when the film releases wide. But we got an early advance screening of it, and I'm excited for that. So I want to preface by saying we're not going to spoil anything in the movie when we talk about it. So this is a completely safe review to not spoil any details of the movie. But I'm not going to lie, man. We got to see it. I absolutely love this movie. There's so many fun aspects of this. I thought the voice casting was fantastic as well. A really good story, and we get kind of the early tellings of, the stories of Optimus Prime and Megatron here, and how they, kind of get this interesting tale from potential friends to where we know them to be as enemies in the main Transformers story.
Yeah, so if you don't know anything about the story of Transformers 1, it is an origin story. It's taking us back to the beginning before the Autobots and Decepticons, about Cybertron as all the Primes kind of have been defeated, and we're left with one left, who's Sentinel Prime, who's leading up, this major town on Cybertron. But, without the matrix of leadership that was lost with the death of the main Primes, the Energon is not flowing like it used to, so they have to mine and get it all. So that's where we see, Megatron, who's known as D16, and we have Optimus Prime, who is Orion Pax. They don't have their cores. They can't transform. They're friends. They know each other, but they're miners. They're down in the mines, mining all the Energon and everything. And we get to see kind of the origins of their characters, along with the relationship and how it dissolved into being Optimus versus Megatron and Decepticons versus Autobots. And yeah, I really loved it. I mean, the animation was gorgeous to look at. There was a lot of action. It told its story really well. It gave us a solid evolution of these characters. While we didn't have a whole lot of fluff, we just went through, like, everything tied in and made sense to the story of moving the story forward. And I really enjoyed it. Like, it was a ton of fun to watch. I was having a blast with it. And, there's a lot of people, the controversy because Peter Cullen is the voice of Optimus Prime, and he wasn't used here as Chris Hemsworth, but there's a reason, because it is a more, I wouldn't say arrogant, but it's a different Optimus. He hasn't learned that leadership at the beginning. He's kind of doing his own thing. He's kind of a rebel, and he wants to, he's obsessed with making the Primes notice him and know who he is and everything else. And we got a good journey of him to where we know him as Optimus Prime. It's still a very young character, but we got a good journey with him.
Yeah, so this movie is a ton of fun. It's got a great mix of humor. It's got a great mix of action. The voice casting is fantastic in it. So you have Chris Hemsworth as, Orion Pax, Optimus Prime. You've got Brian Tyree Henry as D16. You've got, Scarlett Johansson as Alita. You've got Keegan-Michael Key as, B, ultimately Bumblebee. And it's so much fun. One of my favorite jokes that they do make in the movie has to do with a Key and Peele reference. So if you're a fan of Key and Peele, be on the lookout for that. Both of us just started dying.
Nice little
laughing.
Easter egg.
It's so funny. Like, it's such a funny moment, and we won't spoil that for you, obviously. But yeah, they do a really good job of, like, the rise of these characters. And one of the story parallels, if I could compare it to anything we've seen to kind of give people a frame of reference, it's a lot like the Lego Movie in a lot of cases, because you have these guys that, they do this monotonous job, but it's like everything is awesome kind of thing. Like, we love, we love the Primes, and we love, we just want them to notice us and do better, and we feel like we have a bigger purpose. It's a lot like the Lego Movie in that respects, because, if you if you know what happens to these characters and how they get there, like, they do a good job of telling that story. And it's just so much fun. The humor is on point in that. The dialogue's funny. And like you said, visually, this film is absolutely stunning. So the action sequences look phenomenal.
Yeah, a lot of big action set pieces.
A lot of big action, a lot of laughs, a good time. We had a very packed theater when we went and saw it. A lot of people were excited for it. Everybody seemed to be having a really great time watching this movie. And I can't say enough good things about it. If you love the Transformers, you're going to love this movie.
I don't see why you wouldn't enjoy it.
It's such a fun telling. It's a fun story that they tell, and get to see kind of a side of these guys that we're not used to seeing. But a lot of people, like you said, have an issue with Chris Hemsworth being, Optimus Prime when it's not Peter Cullen. But I really feel like by the end of the film, he really finds his voice as Optimus, as like a different Optimus, right? But he has enough of it where you see where he's kind of evolving into like a Peter Cullen voice type for Optimus. Yeah, you get a little, and a lot of that could be digital affecting on his voice a little bit, but he starts to find that, Optimus kind of, and they have a little bit of fun with that with some other characters as well that we won't repeat. There's going to be some kids saying some surprising, not so suitable for work things.
It's a PG movie, but if you do have younger kids, it uses one curse word, one of the lower ones on there, but it uses it quite a lot in a catchy way that my 9-year-old looked at me and said it. I'm like, okay, let's not, like, a little too young to be saying it, but I know after this movie comes out, you're going to have a lot of problems with kids going to school and saying this name and stuff. But it was funny for the adults and funny for it to be done, but it's like, I don't know if that maybe should have been included, just because you're going to have a lot of kids who are going to be saying that.
I was laughing hysterically, but yeah, it was when your youngest said that, it was pretty funny. It was like, I can see how that's going to catch on with some kids. I'm surprised they put it in a PG film, but it was still funny. It's still done in a way that's not like terrible or bad.
There's that parenting moment where I'm trying to not let her see me laugh,
right?
So I can say, okay, sweetheart, yeah, let's not say that again. It's okay. And I'm turning, because Josh was to my left, and I'm like trying to hold back from crack up laughing.
It's so funny, but yeah, it's a good movie, like on its own standing. Like, it's a good film. I think a lot of people will enjoy it. An early advanced rating for me on a scale of 1 to 10, I give it like an 8.5. I thought it was
I would put it up there. Yeah,
I thought it was really, really, really well done, and probably on par with Inside Out as far as my favorite animated film of the year.
It is up there for one of the best of the year. It's
up there, fantastic as well. That is one that's going to have a high rewatchability with me. Absolutely. I definitely plan on watching it multiple times. So it's definitely one that we recommend going to see in the theater. It's a ton of fun. Take the kids. Tell them not to say that word, but you'll know it when you see it. But it's a lot of fun for the whole family. It's like I said, it's funny. It's heartwarming. You get Optimus Prime growing into the leader of, the Autobots that we know and love. And by the end of the film, it sets up potentially some more storytelling possibilities that we could see moving forward. It doesn't sound like this is going to be the only one of these films we're going to get. I expect it to make a ton of money. I really do. It's going to make a lot of money, and for good reason. It's a very well done film.
Yeah, Transformers 1 was a great acted. It looked beautiful, sound, just everything overall. It told its story so well. I mean, it left open that there are a group that we were introduced to that played a key part to the film, but we didn't get as much maybe as we thought we were going to get with them. But it sets up potentially a lot of sequels that could be dealing with them and everything else. And there is a immediate after credit scene, and then there is a post credit scene. So if you're one, especially with the Marvel universe has got us one that you can wait to the very end. It's not a crucial scene, but it's a good scene to be able to see that does set up, potentially for sequels and everything going forward. But yeah, I absolutely love Transformers 1. I think they did a fantastic job from top to bottom. There isn't anything that I could really nitpick where I see that they did anything really wrong. Like, it was a great, fun, action-packed film that I can't wait to watch again and see more of going forward. But it's in theaters this upcoming weekend, and we hope you go out and see it.
Absolutely, and it's one of those that you see the commercials for, and you see the hyperbole of, oh, it's the greatest Transformers film ever, said this critic and reviewer. I'd rank it right up there with anything they've done Transformers-wise, with the whole Michael Bay Transformers universe that they've done so far. I'd put it on par with any one of them, and even harken it back to, the 80s animated series that is so beloved by so many people. I'd put it on par with anything they've done.
I would put it close to the original Transformers animated movie. It's up there.
It's definitely highly ranking up there, and I don't say that lightly as somebody who loves Transformers as much as we do. Like, that's not hyperbole on our part. It's warranted the hype that it's getting. It's a very well done film.
It's a great, fun, easy watch. Like, it blew through its running time. Like, it was over before we even thought it, but not in a bad way.
Right.
Like, we were having so much fun that it was, all right, we're gone through the story and we're done. Like, that was just a great movie.
Easy to breeze through. It's about an hour and 45 minutes total runtime, and worth every minute of your watch for sure. It's definitely one that the whole family's going to enjoy, and definitely one to watch over and over again. It's going in my rotation, absolutely, for sure.
I had to crack up and want to mention that in the screening we were doing, there was a little kid. There was a dramatic part that happens, and you just hear this tiny little voice going, "Oh no, what's happening?" Like, it was just, I think you got the whole audience was just invested, that kid was invested in the movie, as we all were. Like, it is such a fun movie. We highly recommend checking out this week Transformers 1.
Absolutely. And we're thankful to have gotten an early screening on that, and definitely can't recommend that enough to anybody that wants to see it, that loves Transformers, or maybe not. Maybe you'll fall in love with it in this movie. I really do think you'll enjoy it.
So yeah, coming up this week is Transformers 1. You can check that out starting on Thursday. We also have the Halle Berry horror horror film Never Let Go, which looks kind of intriguing and interesting. I'm curious to see how that one is going to turn out.
Absolutely.
On demand wise, we do have a few that's barely had a run again. So it's, again, this, while we're having some good fun movies, we've got a ton that are just being thrown out there and then straight to digital. So 1992 and Blink Twice, which just came out, they're going to be available on demand on September 17th. And we also had The Crow, which you can go back and see our review of this latest reboot with Bill Skarsgård. It had a surprise drop on September 13th on demand. So we've got kind of 3 films here that didn't have a great run in theaters, like didn't get a chance to check it either. 1992 wasn't being shown anywhere near us, so we couldn't check it out even if we wanted to. And Blink Twice, again, it seemed like it got decent reviews and had made a okay box office, but just immediately going to digital.
Yeah, it was caught in the mix of some bigger films. I think kind of did it in. It's definitely one that I plan on checking out when it comes on digital. I've been wanting to see it. Never got to the theater to see it, but definitely want to check out because casting looks great on it, and definitely excited to check that one out.
Yeah, TV-wise, we have a few big shows coming back this week, or debuting this week. So we have Agatha All Along, the spinoff from WandaVision. So we're going to see exactly kind of what happened and takes place right after WandaVision and getting more horror, witches and stuff. That looks like a lot of fun. That'll be on Disney Plus on September 18th. We also, because we're big fans of it, we've been watching from the beginning. Also had one of my teachers was on, Survivor. Our teachers was on Survivor. Survivor season 47 also out on September 18th. Then we also have the Penguin Limited series will be on HBO and Max on September 19th. So that's one I'm really looking forward to check out. Like, it's getting some great buzz and reviews. I can't wait to see what they did with that.
Looks fantastic, and I'll say it until the end of time. You couldn't have convinced me it was Colin Farrell if you wanted to. He looks like he's completely lost himself in that role, and it looks like a lot of fun. Excited to check that episode out when it does air this week, and watching the entire series as it rolls out on there.
And it sounds like from the reviewer saying he really lost himself in this role and character. Like, he committed so hard to the accent and just the movement and everything, really just committing to being the Penguin. So yeah, that's probably one of my most anticipated left of the year, past Agatha. I'm really looking forward to, but the Penguin I'm really looking forward to seeing here.
Absolutely.
And then to wrap up on TV this week, on September 22nd, we have the reboot of Matlock happening here with Kathy Bates playing the main role. But it's more to note that Kathy Bates has said this is her final role. Whenever this series, if it only gets one season or, however long it runs, this is going to be her final acting job. She's going to retire from acting after Matlock.
Yeah, and what an incredible career she's had over the years, and a career spanning decades now, and this is her kind of swan song that she's playing a reboot of Matlock, which is a very popular procedural court drama, detective type show that was very popular in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's getting reboot now with her in it. It's her final role. What an amazing career that she has had, and just kind of wanted to show it some love and highlight for somebody who's had just the prolonged career that she has had. Her final role ever. We'll see how long that ride lasts for. Who knows? I mean, if it's going to be on CBS, it's got a fair shot to last for a while. Those shows tend to go on forever. I think we're on 150 seasons of NCIS at this point. Like
3,000 spinoffs.
Yeah, there's some shows that have some staying power on there, so it could be one that sticks around for a little while. CBS is one that, you're either canceled immediately or you get 13 seasons. So if it makes it past season 1, she could be playing that role for a while. So hopefully this is not an immediate send-off for her, but one that could last for a few years, and she gets a nice run out of it. So kudos to Kathy Bates for sure.
It looks like it could be fun, but then again, it's just how will Matlock work in this day and age? Because, we know the original and stuff and see exactly how they make this show work in the modern age. And with Kathy Bates as the head and stuff, I mean, she's a fantastic actress, so she can carry anything. So, but yeah, for that to be her final role, I don't know if she just either loved doing the role that much or she was just like, you know what, it's just time.
I love that, though, but she's kind of going out on her own terms, more or less, without, however long the network's willing to let her do it. But good for her saying, like, hey, this is it. We're going to ride this until we can't, and then when we're done, I'm done. I love that. Going out on your own terms, much respect. Not everybody gets that opportunity, and the fact that she's doing that for her career, more power to you.
Because you got many like we just talked about Sir Ian McKellen. Like he said, he's pretty much going to work until the day he dies because he's just, what else I'm going to do? Just go and get rusty and fade away, or just keep doing the thing I love.
Love it, and having the choice to do either or, more power and respect to you no matter which direction you get to go with it. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. We had a lot of fun talking about, Transformers 1. Please go see that in theaters as well, having fun reviewing Lord of the Rings and the ride that we're on in that. Coming up next week, we've got a little bit of a different episode. So I'm going out of town. There's not going to be a film review this week. We are going to be talking about our favorite films of all time. We've done the guilty pleasure movies, but now we're going to dig into our favorite films overall. Not guilty pleasure. We're going to be talking big time films. We're going to be talking about films that mean a whole lot to us and why we love movies as much as we do. I'm excited to have that fun conversation for sure.
And how many of our guilty pleasure films actually make our way into our favorite list? Because favorite films can have a different meaning, because it can be one that just you watch during a certain time of your life that had emotional impact, that kind of stays with you. It doesn't always mean it's the biggest Oscar award-winning type of movie. It's what the impact it had on you when you saw it. So you might see a couple of our guilty pleasure films ending up in our favorite film list.
I'm excited to have that conversation as well, and we look forward to bringing you that episode next week. But until then, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next time.